Lieutenant Kate Morrison moved through the broken streets of Kepler Station with careful steps. Her boots made no sound on the dust-covered metal floors. Behind her, 4 Marines followed in a single line. The abandoned mining colony felt like a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams. Kate raised her fist and the squad stopped. She listened to the silence around them. No wind moved through the empty buildings. No machinery hummed in the distance. Even the air felt dead here. The Zalathi had hit this place hard 6 months ago, and nothing had lived here since. Sergeant Danny Cruz moved up beside her. His dark eyes scanned the shadows between the broken buildings. "This place gives me the creeps, Lieutenant," he whispered. "Too quiet." Kate nodded but kept moving forward. They had a job to do. Command needed to know where the Zalathi forces were moving next. 3 human colonies had already fallen to the alien empire in the past year. New Portland could be next, if they did not get good intelligence soon. Corporal Lisa Park followed third in line, her scanner sweeping for electronic signals. Private Jake Coleman carried extra ammunition for the squad's heavy weapon. Private Amy Wright brought up the rear, watching behind them for any signs of pursuit. The war had been going badly for 3 years now. The Zalathi Empire had better weapons, better ships, and more soldiers than humanity could field. Every battle ended the same way. Humans fought hard, killed many aliens, then had to retreat when more enemy forces arrived. It was getting old fast. Kate had joined the Marines to protect human colonies on the frontier. Instead, she spent most of her time running from fights they could not win. But orders were orders, and this reconnaissance mission might give them the edge they needed. She led her squad deeper into the colony. The buildings here had been homes once. Families had lived and worked in these spaces. Now broken furniture and scattered belongings told the story of people who had to leave everything behind when the Zalathi came. "Contact ahead," Lisa whispered, into her comm unit. "Getting some electronic noise from the industrial sector." Kate held up her hand again. The squad took cover behind a collapsed wall. She pulled out her field glasses and studied the area ahead. Nothing moved between the buildings, but that did not mean they were alone. The Zalathi were tall, lizard-like creatures with tough scales instead of skin. They carried plasma weapons that could cut through human armor like paper. Worse, they were smart fighters who had been conquering other species for hundreds of years. Humans were just the latest race to feel their power. Kate had fought them before. She knew how they moved, how they thought, how they liked to set up their attacks. The aliens preferred direct assaults with overwhelming firepower. They did not use much stealth or trickery. Honor was important to them, and they saw sneaky tactics as weakness. That might be the only advantage humans had. The Zalathi expected their enemies to fight like warriors. They did not expect humans to be as sneaky and unpredictable as they often were. "Danny, take Jake and circle around to the left," Kate ordered quietly. "Lisa, you and Amy go right. I will move straight through the middle. If there are any Zalathi here, we squeeze them between us." The sergeant nodded and hand-signaled the plan to the others. Within seconds, the squad had split up and begun moving toward the industrial sector. Kate advanced alone through the center path, using destroyed vehicles and fallen debris for cover. The industrial area had been the heart of Kepler Station. Large machines had once processed raw materials from the local mines. Now everything was broken and covered in blast marks from Zalathi plasma weapons. Kate could see where the aliens had destroyed anything that might be useful to humans. She reached the edge of a large open space where the main processing plant had stood. Her comm unit crackled with static. "This is Cruz, in position on the floor. Left flank. Nothing moving over here. Park here. Right side is clear. Seeing some old blast marks, but no fresh activity." Kate studied the area through her field glasses again. Something felt wrong. The electronic signals Lisa had detected were stronger here, but she could not see any equipment that might be causing them. The Zalathi had destroyed everything visible. That was when she noticed the pattern in the debris. Some of the wreckage had been moved recently. Drag marks in the dust showed where heavy objects had been repositioned. Someone had been here after the original attack. "All units, pull back now," Kate whispered into her comm. This is a trap. She started moving backward, but it was too late. Plasma bolts erupted from hidden positions all around the open area. The Zalathi had been waiting for them. Bright green energy beams cut through the air where Kate had been standing a second before. She threw herself behind a chunk of broken concrete as more shots followed her. The aliens had hidden themselves under the debris and camouflaged their positions perfectly. "Contact, contact," Danny's voice shouted over the comm. "Multiple hostiles left side. Jake is down." "Taking heavy fire on the right," Lisa reported. "Amy is hit. We need to move," Kate cursed under her breath. The Zalathi had learned from their previous battles with humans. Instead of using their usual direct assault tactics, they had set up an ambush. They were adapting to fight humans more effectively. A tall figure in alien battle armor stood up from behind a pile of scrap metal 50 meters away. The Zalathi warrior was over 7 feet tall with dark green scales and yellow eyes that glowed in the dim light. He carried a plasma rifle that was longer than Kate was tall. The alien spotted her hiding place and raised his weapon. Kate rolled to the side just as a plasma bolt melted the concrete where she had been crouching. The heat from the near miss made her face burn. She came up firing her assault rifle. The bullet sparked off the alien's armor but did not penetrate. The Zalathi advanced toward her position, firing steadily. Each plasma bolt came closer than the last. Kate's comm unit burst with panicked voices. Her squad was scattered and taking casualties. They had walked into a carefully planned trap and now they were paying the price for it. "All units fighting withdrawal," she ordered. "Get back to the rally point. Move, move, move." She provided covering fire as Danny and the wounded. Jake retreated from their position. Lisa was helping Amy, who had taken a plasma hit to her shoulder. The smell of burned flesh mixed with the metallic scent of melted metal. More Zalathi soldiers appeared from hidden positions. Kate counted at least a dozen of them, maybe more. Her squad was outnumbered 3-1 by enemies with better weapons and armor. They had no choice but to run. Kate fired her last magazine at the advancing aliens and started running toward the extraction point. A plasma bolt caught her in the back, punching through her armor and burning into her ribs. The impact sent her tumbling into a pile of debris. Pain shot through her left leg as another plasma bolt grazed her thigh. She could smell her own burned flesh and uniform. Her vision blurred from the shock and pain, but she kept moving. "Lieutenant is down," she heard Danny shout over the comm. "Kate is down." "Negative, keep moving," she tried to reply, but her comm unit had been damaged in the fall. Static filled her earpiece. Kate dragged herself behind a fallen wall as plasma bolts continued to fly overhead. She could hear her squad fighting their way back toward the colony entrance. The sound of gunfire was getting farther away with each passing second. Blood ran down her leg and side. Her ribs felt like they were on fire. But she was alive, and she still had her sidearm and knife. The Zalathi thought they had won this fight. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Kate stayed perfectly still behind the broken wall. Her breathing was shallow and quiet. Every movement sent pain through her burned ribs and leg. The plasma wounds throbbed with each heartbeat, but she forced herself to remain silent. The sounds of battle faded into the distance. Her squad was retreating, following orders to get back to base with whatever intelligence they had gathered. She hoped Danny had managed to save Jake and Amy. Good Marines never left anyone behind if they could help it, but sometimes they had no choice. Footsteps crunched on debris nearby. Kate pressed herself against the concrete and held her breath. Through a gap in the wall, she could see Zalathi soldiers moving through the area. They were checking bodies and searching for survivors. One alien stopped just 10 feet from her hiding spot. He was smaller than the others, with lighter green scales and fewer battle scars. Kate guessed he was young for a Zalathi warrior. His plasma rifle swept back and forth as he examined the area where she had fallen. The alien spoke in his own language. Kate did not understand the words, but the tone sounded like a question. Another Zalathi answered from farther away. The young soldier nodded and moved on to search another section of debris. Kate waited until she could no longer hear footsteps before allowing herself to breathe normally. Blood had soaked through her uniform and was starting to pool beneath her. She needed to stop the bleeding soon or she would pass out from blood loss. Using her knife, she cut strips of cloth from her uniform sleeves. The plasma burns were too severe to bandage properly, but she could at least slow the bleeding. She bit down on a piece of metal to keep from crying out as she tied the makeshift bandages around her wounds. The pain was incredible. Plasma weapons did not just cut through flesh like bullets. They burned and melted everything they touched. Her ribs felt like someone had pressed a hot iron against them. Her leg muscle had been cooked by the energy beam. But she was still alive. That was more than many humans could say after fighting the Zalathi. Kate checked her equipment. Her main rifle was lost somewhere in the retreat. Her comm unit was damaged, but might still work for short-range signals. She had her sidearm with 2 full magazines, her combat knife, emergency rations for 3 days, and a water purification tablet. Not much to survive on behind enemy lines. As night fell over Kepler Station, Kate heard more activity in the area. The Zalathi were setting up some kind of camp in the ruins. She could see lights moving between the buildings and hear voices speaking in their harsh language. She crawled to a better observation point behind a pile of twisted metal beams. Through the gaps, she could watch the aliens as they worked. They moved with military precision, setting up defensive positions and communication equipment. This was not just a patrol or search party. The Zalathi were establishing a forward command post. Kate counted at least 20 soldiers in the immediate area. More might be stationed in other parts of the colony. They had brought portable generators, communication arrays, and what looked like tactical planning equipment. This was a major operation. The aliens worked through the night in shifts. Kate watched their patterns carefully. Guard rotations happened every 2 hours. Patrol routes followed the same paths each time. The Zalathi liked order and routine, even in hostile territory. She also noticed something interesting about their behavior. The aliens did not seem comfortable in the dark. They used more lights than humans would need and stayed close to their illuminated areas. Their movements were more cautious at night, less confident than during daylight hours. That could be useful information. As dawn broke, Kate got her first good look at the Zalathi command structure. A large alien in elaborate armor emerged from what had been the colony's administrative building. His scales were darker than the others, almost black in some places. Scars covered his arms and neck like badges of honor. Most importantly, he wore a distinctive helmet with carved symbols and metal decorations. This had to be their commanding officer. Other aliens stopped what they were doing and stood at attention when he passed by. Kate studied the commander as he inspected his troops. He moved with absolute confidence, never hurrying but never wasting motion either. When he spoke, the other aliens listened without interruption. When he pointed, they moved immediately to carry out his orders. The commander's inspection route took him past Kate's hiding spot twice during the morning. He followed the same path both times, checking defensive positions and equipment status. Like everything else the Zalathi did, it was predictable and methodical. Kate used her damaged comm unit to try reaching human forces. Static filled most frequencies, but she managed to send short bursts of coded information. Position reports, enemy strength estimates, and tactical observations. She did not know if anyone was receiving her transmissions, but she had to try. By noon, the heat from the alien world's twin suns made her hiding place almost unbearable. Kate had to drink water frequently to avoid dehydration. Her plasma wounds were infected and getting worse. Fever made her thoughts fuzzy at times, but she kept watching and learning. The Zalathi had a weakness she had never noticed in previous battles. Their armor was designed for their desert homeworld, with cooling vents and flexible joints that worked well in dry heat. But those same design features created vulnerable spots that human weapons might be able to exploit. She also realized that their communication system was entirely verbal. They did not use hand signals or electronic messaging like human forces did. If something happened to their commander, the entire unit might be thrown into confusion. That afternoon, Kate overheard a conversation between 2 Zalathi guards. She did not understand their language, but their tone and gestures suggested they were complaining about something. One pointed toward the human settlement of New Portland. The other nodded and made what looked like a cutting motion across his throat. They were planning an attack. Kate tried her comm unit again. This time she managed to get through to someone. though the signal was weak and full of static. Firebase Alpha, this is Morrison. Do you copy? Kate? Kate Morrison? We thought you were dead. Where are you? The voice was faint but familiar. Colonel Ben Hayes, the commanding officer at Firebase Alpha. Kate had served under him for 2 years. Before this mission, I am behind enemy lines at Kepler Station. The Zalathi have established a command post here. Major force, at least 20 soldiers. They are planning something big. Can you get out of there? We can send a rescue team. Kate looked at her wounds and the Zalathi guards patrolling just 50 meters away. Negative. Too many hostiles. But I can provide intelligence. They are planning an attack on New Portland soon. The signal faded into static before Hayes could respond. Kate tried to re-establish contact, but her comm unit finally gave out completely. She was on her own now. As evening approached, Kate watched the Zalathi commander make his inspection rounds again. Same route, same timing, same confident stride. He examined guard posts, checked equipment, and spoke briefly with subordinates. During one of these stops, Kate noticed something that made her heart race. The commander was studying a holographic map that showed the area around New Portland. Red markers indicated Zalathi forces. Blue markers showed known human positions. There were far more red markers than blue ones. Kate counted the alien positions on the map. The Zalathi had at least 3 full battalions positioned around the human settlement. They were planning a coordinated assault that would hit New Portland from multiple directions simultaneously. The humans had no idea what was coming. Kate made a decision that would change everything. She could not reach her own forces by radio. She could not walk out of here with her injuries. But she could do something that might save thousands of human lives. She could take out the Zalathi commander. It would be suicide, but it might disrupt their attack long enough for New Portland to prepare defenses. Kate had sworn an oath to protect human colonies. Sometimes that meant making the ultimate sacrifice. She spent the rest of the night planning her attack and preparing her equipment. Tomorrow evening, when the commander made his final inspection of the day, she would be ready. The Zalathi thought they had won this battle. They were about to learn that humans never gave up even when facing impossible odds. Kate waited in the shadows as the 3rd day behind enemy lines began. Her fever had gotten worse overnight. The infected wounds on her ribs and leg throbbed with every heartbeat. She had used the last of her water an hour ago, but her mind was clear about what she had to do. She had spent 2 full days watching the Zalathi commander, Captain Thextar. That was the name she had heard other aliens use when speaking to him. His evening inspection always followed the same pattern. He would leave the main command building at exactly 1800 hours local time. Then he would walk the perimeter, alone, checking guard positions and equipment. The walk took him through a narrow passage between 2 collapsed buildings. For exactly 3 minutes, he would be out of sight from his guards and completely alone. That was Kate's window of opportunity. She checked her sidearm one more time, 15 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber. Her combat knife was sharp and ready. The plan was simple. Get close enough to kill the commander, take his equipment and codes, then try to reach human lines with intelligence about the coming attack. Simple, but not easy. Kate could barely walk on her injured leg. Her ribs sent shooting pain through her chest with every breath. Against a healthy Zalathi warrior in full armor, she would normally have no chance at all. But she had advantages. The alien would not expect. Humans were smaller and more flexible than Zalathi. They were also more willing to fight dirty when necessary. Honor was important to the lizard warriors. Survival was more important to humans. Kate had also chosen her battlefield carefully. Passage between the buildings was narrow and filled with debris. Thextar would not be able to use his reach advantage or move freely in his bulky armor. She would have to get in close and make every shot count. As the day wore on, Kate prepared herself mentally for what was coming. She thought about her squad and hoped they had made it back to base safely. She thought about the civilians in New Portland who had no idea that death was marching toward them. She thought about all the human colonies that had already fallen to Zalathi conquest. This was her chance to strike back. The sun was setting when Kate heard familiar footsteps approaching. Captain Thextar was beginning his evening inspection right on schedule. She pressed herself against the wall and controlled her breathing as the alien commander walked past her hiding spot. Thextar was even larger up close than he had appeared from a distance, nearly 8 feet tall with muscles that bulged beneath his scaled skin. His armor was thick and well-maintained, designed to stop human bullets and energy weapons. The ceremonial helmet on his head was decorated with symbols that probably represented his victories in battle. Kate waited until the commander was halfway through the narrow passage before making her move. She stepped out from behind a pile of rubble and raised her sidearm. "Hey, lizard," she called out in English. Thextar spun around with surprising speed for such a large creature. His yellow eyes widened when he saw the wounded human pointing a weapon at him. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the Zalathi captain laughed. It was a deep rumbling sound that echoed off the walls of the passage. "A human whelp thinks to challenge me," he said in accented but understandable English. "You are wounded and weak. I am Captain Thextar of the 3rd Assault Legion. I have killed more of your kind than you have years of life." "Maybe," Kate replied, keeping her pistol aimed at his head. "But I only need to kill one of yours." She pulled the trigger. The bullet struck Thextar's helmet and ricocheted off without penetrating. The alien captain drew his plasma sidearm with fluid motion and fired. Back! Kate threw herself to the side as the energy beam seared the air where she had been standing. The narrow confines of the passage worked in Kate's favor. Thextar could not bring his full strength to bear, and his bulky armor slowed him down. Kate rolled behind a chunk of concrete as another plasma bolt scorched the ground beside her. She came up firing, putting 3 rounds into the captain's chest armor. The bullets sparked off the metal plating but did no real damage. Thextar advanced toward her position, his plasma weapon charging for another shot. Kate scrambled backward and fired again, this time aiming for the joints in his armor. One bullet found a gap at his elbow, drawing a roar of pain and anger from the alien commander. Green blood seeped through the damaged armor. "You fight without honor," Thextar snarled, raising his weapon. "I fight to win," Kate shot back, emptying her magazine at his legs. 2 more bullets found gaps in the armor plating. The Zalathi captain stumbled but did not fall. His return shot missed Kate by inches, melting a hole in the wall behind her. Kate reloaded her pistol with her last magazine. 15 more rounds against an enemy who seemed almost impossible to kill. She needed a better plan than just shooting at his armor. Looking around the passage, Kate spotted a section of wall that had been weakened by previous damage. Blast marks and cracks showed where Zalathi weapons had hit during their original assault on the colony. If she could bring down that wall, it might create enough chaos to give her an opening. She fired 4 rounds at the damaged wall supports while dodging another plasma blast from Thextar. Concrete dust rained down as the structure began to shift. Kate dove to one side as a large section of wall collapsed between her and the alien commander. Dust filled the air, making it hard to see or breathe. Kate heard Thextar cursing in his own language as he tried to clear debris from his path. She used the confusion to move to a better position. When the dust settled, Kate found herself behind the alien captain. Thextar was facing the wrong direction, his plasma weapon aimed at where she had been before the wall collapse. His ornate helmet had been knocked askew by falling debris. Kate did not hesitate. She put her pistol against the back of his neck, just below the helmet, and pulled the trigger 3 times. The bullets punched through the softer armor at the base of his skull. Thextar roared in pain and spun around, his massive arm sweeping toward Kate's head. She ducked under the blow and stabbed her combat knife into the wound she had just created. The Zalathi captain staggered and fell to his knees. Kate stepped back and put 2 more rounds into his head at point-blank range. This time, the bullets penetrated completely. Captain Thextar of the 3rd Assault Legion crashed to the ground and lay still. Kate stood over the dead alien, breathing hard. Every part of her body hurt and she was dizzy from blood loss and fever. But she had done it. She had killed a Zalathi officer in single combat. Now came the hard part. Kate stripped the commander's equipment as quickly as possible. His plasma sidearm was too heavy for her to carry far, but she took his ammunition cells and power packs. The ceremonial helmet was surprisingly light despite its size. Most importantly, she found his command codes and tactical datapad. The datapad contained detailed information about the planned assault on New Portland. Troop positions, attack routes, timing, everything the human defenders would need to prepare an effective defense. This intelligence was worth more than her life. Kate also found something unexpected in Thextar's equipment, a human military identification tag on a chain around his neck. The name read, Colonel Patricia Stone, 42nd Colonial Defense Regiment. Kate recognized the name from casualty reports. Stone had been killed defending the colony of Haven's Rest 8 months ago. The Zalathi captain had been keeping trophies from his victories. Kate took the dog tag and added it to her own. Patricia Stone deserved to go home, even if it was only her identification tag. Footsteps echoed from the direction of the command post. Other Zalathi soldiers were coming to investigate the sounds of battle. Kate put on Thextar's helmet and grabbed his ceremonial cloak. In the darkness, she might be able to fool them long enough to escape. Her leg was getting worse, but she forced herself to start walking. New Portland was 20 kilometers away through hostile territory. Kate had maybe 6 hours before the Zalathi discovered their commander's body and raised the alarm. 6 hours to cross 20 kilometers on a bad leg while carrying vital intelligence that could save thousands of lives. Kate Morrison had never backed down from a challenge in her life. She was not about to start now. Kate limped through the darkness wearing the dead captain's helmet and cloak. Every step sent fire through her wounded leg. The plasma burns on her ribs made breathing painful. But she kept moving toward the human settlement of New Portland 20 kilometers away. The ceremonial helmet was heavier than she had expected. The metal decorations and carved symbols added weight that made her neck ache. But it also hid her human features in the dim light. From a distance, she might pass for a Zalathi officer making his rounds. She hoped. The first test came 30 minutes into her journey. A Zalathi patrol was moving along the same route she needed to take. Kate saw their lights bobbing between the ruins ahead of her. 3 soldiers carrying plasma rifles and scanning for threats. Kate forced herself to walk with the same measured pace she had observed from Captain Thextar. Straight back, confident stride, no hurry but no wasted motion. The Zalathi respected authority and rarely questioned their superiors. The patrol spotted her approaching and immediately stopped their advance. Kate's heart pounded as the lead soldier raised his weapon toward her. In the darkness, she could see his yellow eyes studying her silhouette. Then he lowered his rifle and spoke in the Zalathi language. Kate did not understand the words, but the tone was respectful. He was reporting to what he thought was his commanding officer. Kate nodded once and pointed in the direction the patrol had come from. She made a sharp gesture with her hand, the same type of motion she had seen Thextar use when giving orders. The soldiers looked at each other uncertainly. One of them asked what sounded like a question. Kate pointed again, more forcefully this time. She tried to copy the captain's commanding presence, standing as tall as her injuries would allow. The Zalathi soldiers snapped to attention and turned around. They marched back the way they had come, following what they believed were orders from their captain. Kate waited until their lights disappeared before allowing herself to breathe normally again. 2 hours passed before she encountered another patrol. This time it was a single guard posted at a checkpoint between 2 hills. Kate approached from the side, staying in the shadows until the last possible moment. The guard challenged her in the Zalathi language. Kate could not understand the words, but she recognized the tone. He was asking for identification or passwords. Kate stepped into the light and let him see the ceremonial helmet and cloak. She pointed at herself, then at the direction of New Portland, then made a cutting motion across her throat, the same gesture she had seen Zalathi soldiers make when discussing the planned attack. The guard's eyes widened with understanding. He thought Captain Thextar was personally leading advance reconnaissance for the assault. He stepped aside and waved her through the checkpoint. Kate nodded and continued walking. Her deception was working, but it would not last much longer. Soon the Zalathi would discover their captain's body and realize what had happened. Then every alien soldier in the area would be hunting for her. By the fourth hour of her journey, Kate's condition was getting worse. The infection from her plasma wounds was spreading. Fever made her vision blur and her thoughts fuzzy. She stumbled more often and had to rest every few hundred meters. But she kept moving. The third patrol she encountered was larger than the others. 6 soldiers led by what looked like a sergeant based on his armor markings. They were more alert than the previous guards, scanning the area carefully and communicating by hand signals. Kate tried the same approach that had worked before. Confident stride, commanding presence, pointing in directions to give implied orders. But this sergeant was not as easily fooled as the others. He spoke at length in the Zalathi language. Kate caught a few words that sounded like questions. The sergeant was asking for specific information she could not provide. His tone was becoming suspicious. Kate decided to take a risk. She had heard Captain Thextar's voice often enough to know how he sounded, deep and harsh, with rolling consonants that were typical of Zalathi speech. She tried to imitate his voice, as she spoke a few words in broken Zalathi. Thextar. Attack. New Portland. Silence. It was not perfect, but in the darkness with the helmet distorting her voice, it might be enough. Kate pointed at the sergeant and made a throat-cutting gesture. Then she pointed at his soldiers and repeated the gesture. The meaning was clear. Captain Thextar was ordering them to maintain silence about the coming attack. Anyone who spoke would be executed. The sergeant's eyes widened with fear. He barked orders at his soldiers, who immediately spread out and took defensive positions. They thought their captain was warning them about human spies in the area. Kate walked past them without another word. She could feel their eyes watching her, but none of them dared to speak or ask more questions. Fear of their captain's reputation had bought her safe passage. Dawn was breaking as Kate reached the halfway point of her journey. 10 kilometers behind her, 10 kilometers still to go. Her leg was barely supporting her weight now. The makeshift bandages were soaked with blood and pus from her infected wounds. She found shelter in an abandoned farm building and allowed herself a few minutes of rest. The tactical datapad she had taken from Thextar showed detailed maps of the planned attack routes. 3 full Zalathi battalions would hit New Portland from different directions at noon today. Kate checked the time display on the datapad. It was already 8 in the morning. She had 4 hours to cover 10 kilometers and deliver the intelligence to human forces. With her injuries, it should have been impossible. But impossible was just another word for difficult. Kate forced herself back to her feet and continued walking. The Zalathi helmet felt heavier with each step. The ceremonial cloak kept getting caught on debris. But she did not dare abandon her disguise while still in enemy territory. The 4th patrol she encountered nearly ended her mission. A group of Zalathi engineers were setting up communication equipment on a hilltop. They had a clear view of the surrounding area and spotted Kate while she was still several hundred meters away. One of them called out to her in their language. Kate waved and continued walking, but the engineer called out again. This time his tone was more insistent. He wanted her to come to their position. Kate had no choice but to approach. As she got closer, she could see that these were not regular soldiers. They were technical specialists with different armor and equipment. They might know Captain Thextar personally. The lead engineer spoke rapidly in Zalathi, pointing at his communication array and then at Kate. He was asking for orders about the equipment setup. Kate nodded and pointed toward New Portland, hoping he would interpret that as approval to continue his work. But the engineer frowned and asked another question. This time, Kate caught a word she recognized. Thextar. He was asking where Captain Thextar had been and why he was out here alone. Kate pointed at herself and then made a scouting gesture, sweeping her arm toward the human settlement. She was trying to indicate that the captain was conducting personal reconnaissance. The engineer seemed satisfied with that explanation. He saluted and turned back to his equipment. Kate walked away as quickly as her injured leg would allow. 8 kilometers to go. 2 hours left before the attack began. Kate pushed herself harder than she had ever done before. Each step was agony. But she thought about the families in New Portland who were probably having breakfast right now. Children getting ready for school. Adults heading to work. None of them knowing that death was marching toward their home. She would not let them die without warning. The sun climbed higher as Kate struggled across the final stretch of hostile territory. Her fever was getting worse. Sometimes she forgot where she was or why she was walking. But her Marine training kept her moving forward even when her conscious mind began to fail. 9 kilometers. 1 hour to go. Kate could see the defensive perimeter of Firebase Alpha in the distance. Human soldiers and automated weapons positioned to protect New Portland. They looked pitifully small compared to the force that would soon be attacking them, but they would be ready. Kate would make sure of that. Kate stumbled toward the outer defenses of Firebase Alpha as the morning sun climbed higher. Her legs shook with exhaustion and fever. The Zalathi helmet felt like it weighed 100 pounds on her aching head. But she could see human soldiers. In their defensive positions ahead, a rifle cracked in the distance. The bullet whined past Kate's ear and struck the ground beside her feet. She raised her hands and tried to shout, but her voice came out as a croak. "Human," she managed to call out. "Marine Lieutenant Kate Morrison." More shots followed. The human sentries saw only a figure in Zalathi armor approaching their lines. Kate pulled off the ceremonial helmet and threw it aside. Her short brown hair was matted with sweat and blood, but it was clearly human. "Hold fire! Hold fire!" someone shouted from the defensive line. "That's Morrison!" Sergeant Danny Cruz came running from his position, his face pale with shock. Behind him followed Corporal Lisa Park and Private Amy Wright. Kate had never been so happy to see familiar faces. "Kate, we thought you were dead," Danny said as he caught her before she could fall. "You've been missing for 3 days." "I am about to be dead if we do not move fast," Kate replied. "Where is Colonel Hayes?" "I have intelligence about a major Zalathi attack." Lisa helped support Kate's weight as they moved toward the command bunker. "The colonel is coordinating defenses for New Portland. What kind of attack?" Kate pulled out the tactical data pad she had taken from Captain Thextar. 3 battalions. Coming from the north, east, and south. They hit the settlement at noon today. Amy looked at the alien device with wide eyes. "How did you get this?" "I killed their commanding officer and took his stuff," Kate said matter-of-factly. "Long story. Right now, we need to warn everyone." They reached the command bunker where Colonel Ben Hayes was studying defensive maps with his staff. The colonel looked up as Kate entered, his weathered face showing surprise and relief. "Kate Morrison, you are supposed to be dead," he said. "What happened out there?" Kate collapsed into a chair and placed the Zalathi datapad on the map table. "I spent 3 days watching the enemy prepare for this attack. They have detailed plans, sir. Numbers, routes, timing, everything." Hayes picked up the alien device and activated its display. Holographic images appeared showing the area around New Portland with red markers indicating Zalathi positions. The colonel's expression grew grim as he studied the information. "This shows over 2,000 enemy troops," he said quietly. "We have maybe 300 defenders." "Yes, sir, but we have advantages they do not know about," Kate replied. "I learned their weaknesses while hiding in their camp." For the next 30 minutes, Kate briefed the colonel and his staff on everything she had observed. Zalathi night vision problems, armor vulnerabilities, rigid command structure, and predictable tactics. Most importantly, she described how they could be confused and demoralized if their officers were eliminated. "They expect us to fight like honorable warriors," Kate explained. "Direct confrontation with equal forces. They are not prepared for guerrilla tactics or psychological warfare." Colonel Hayes nodded slowly. "What do you recommend?" Kate pointed to positions on the map. "Hit-and-run attacks during their advance. Target officers first to disrupt their command structure. Use the terrain they are not familiar with. Make them think we have more troops than we actually do." "Can we stop them?" "We can make them pay a heavy price for their victory. Maybe heavy enough that they decide this planet is not worth the cost." Hayes made his decision quickly. He sent orders to all human units in the area. Instead of preparing static defenses, around New Portland, They would set up mobile fighting positions along the Zalathi advance routes. Small teams would harass the enemy columns and then fade away before superior numbers could respond. Kate insisted on participating despite her injuries. Hayes assigned her to coordinate intelligence gathering and target identification. She would use her knowledge of Zalathi tactics to predict their movements and identify the most valuable targets. At 11:30 in the morning, the first Zalathi column appeared on the northern approach to New Portland. Kate watched through binoculars from a hidden observation post as the alien forces advanced in perfect formation. Northern column, approximately 800 troops, she reported over the radio. Command group is in the center, third vehicle back. I can see their battle flags. Human teams armed with portable rocket launchers opened fire from concealed positions. The first salvo destroyed 2 Zalathi vehicles and sent the alien formation scrambling for cover. But instead of pressing the attack, the human teams immediately withdrew to secondary positions. The Zalathi commander tried to organize pursuit, but his troops were confused by the hit-and-run tactics. They were trained to fight enemies who stood and fought, not ghosts who appeared and disappeared in the landscape. Kate's intelligence proved accurate. When human marksmen eliminated the Zalathi officers, their troops became hesitant and disorganized. Without clear orders from above, they moved slowly and cautiously instead of pressing their advance. The eastern and southern columns faced similar harassment. Small human teams struck at communication vehicles, supply trucks, and command posts, before melting away into terrain they knew better than their enemies. Each attack was precisely planned to cause maximum confusion with minimum risk. By 2 in the afternoon, all 3 Zalathi columns had been stopped well short of New Portland. Their casualty numbers were not catastrophic, but their morale was shattered. They had expected to face desperate human defenders making a final stand. Instead, they found an enemy that refused to fight fair. Kate monitored Zalathi communications using Captain Thextar's equipment. The alien field commanders were reporting to their superiors that human resistance was much stronger than expected. They requested reinforcements and air support before continuing the assault, but no reinforcements came. The Zalathi High Command had planned this as a quick victory against a weak enemy. They had not prepared for a prolonged campaign against organized resistance. As evening fell, Kate heard something in the alien communications that made her smile despite her pain. The Zalathi were arguing among themselves about whether to continue the attack or withdraw to regroup. They are rattled, she reported to Colonel Hayes. Their whole plan depended on intimidating us into surrender. Now they do not know what to do, Hayes nodded with satisfaction. How long before they make a decision? Not long. Zalathi do not like uncertainty. They will either attack with everything they have or pull back completely. The answer came at sunset. Zalathi forces began withdrawing from their positions around New Portland. They had decided that conquering this human settlement would cost more than it was worth. News of the victory spread quickly through human space. For the first time since the war began, human forces had stopped a major Zalathi offensive without retreating. More importantly, they had done it by using tactics the aliens could not counter effectively. Kate became a symbol of human determination throughout the colonies. The image of her wearing the enemy captain's helmet appeared on recruitment, posters, and news broadcasts. Stories spread about the Marine who had survived behind enemy lines and brought back the intelligence that saved New Portland. But Kate was more interested in practical results than fame. She worked with military strategists to develop new training, programs based on what she had learned about Zalathi weaknesses. Human forces began adopting the guerrilla tactics that had proven so effective. The war was far from over, but something fundamental had changed. The Zalathi Empire began to realize that conquering humanity would not be as easy as they had assumed. These small, weak creatures possessed something that superior technology could not overcome. They refused to give up. 6 months later, Captain Kate Morrison stood before a class of new recruits at the Colonial Defense Academy. On her desk sat the ceremonial helmet she had taken from Captain Thextar, now polished and mounted as a trophy. The Zalathi are stronger than us, she told her students. They have better weapons, better armor, and more soldiers. But they have, one critical weakness. A young recruit raised his hand. What weakness, Captain? Kate smiled and picked up the alien helmet. They expect their enemies to fight like they do. Honorably, directly, predictably. When we refuse to meet their expectations, when we adapt and improvise and do whatever it takes to survive, we become something they cannot understand or defeat. She placed the helmet back on the desk. Remember this lesson. In war, victory does not always go to the strongest. Sometimes it goes to those who refuse to stay down when they are knocked down. The war against the Zalathi Empire would continue for several more years. But humanity had learned how to fight back. They had discovered that their greatest strength was not any weapon or technology, but their refusal to accept defeat. Kate Morrison had shown them the way forward, not through superior firepower or advanced tactics, but through simple human stubbornness. The determination to keep fighting no matter what the odds. It was enough.